quick show of hands, were y'all able to read the reading for this week? Or
Last week.
this week? We have one? Yes. No? Okay. That's all right. We may, with our limited numbers, we may just kind of read this together this morning. But we'll start maybe with the gospel reading, if I could have a volunteer to read the gospel.
I can get you here.
Okay.
Now among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said to him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip went and told Andrew, and Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also." That was hard to say. "Whoever serves me, the Father will honor. Now my soul is troubled, and what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it is for this reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven, "I have glorified it, and it will glorify it again." The crowd standing there heard it and said that it was thunder. Others said, "An angel has spoken to them." Jesus answered, "This voice has come for your sake, not for mine. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out, and I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." He said this to indicate the kind of death he was to die. The crowd answered him, "We have heard from the law that the Messiah remains forever. How can you say that the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is the Son of Man?" Jesus said to them, "The light is with you for a little longer. Walk while you have the light, so that the darkness may not overtake you. If you walk in the darkness, you do not know where you are going. While you have the light, believe in the light, so that you may become children of the light." After Jesus had said this, he departed and hid from them.
All right, thank you.
Bless you.
Yeah, I think the first observation I would make is that this reading for our devotional today extends a little bit longer than the lectionary text that we'll hear shortly does. We have a few extra verses this morning. But I'll just read a few of these paragraphs from the comment, and then we'll invite some reflection on what our author has to offer us this morning. Edmund Hamilton Sears was born in Sandyfield, Massachusetts in April 1810. The youngest of three sons, he was academically able, studying law, then divinity, and was ordained to ministry in the Unitarian Church. Ministry was hard work, and after 7 years of overwork and pressure, he had a breakdown. He took a part-time job as a preacher in Wayland, and during that time he wrote the hymn, "It Came Upon a Midnight Clear." In this hymn, he examined the contrast between human conflict and the peace of God in such a way as to explain to himself the continuing existence of conflict, and perhaps also his own suffering by it. In our text today, we have the interjection of the divine voice. Then a voice came from heaven, "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." Do we, like the crowd, ascribe it to thunder, or do we side with those who thought it an angel? Or was it the voice of God? For Sears, the supernatural realm and the realm of nature were intertwined and indivisible. The angelic realm and the community of saints were not metaphors, but realities which guided his ethical and moral stance on issues much more pressing to those around him at the time. Despite having been burned out by the early parish years, Sears did not allow this experience to mellow him or to take the sharpness from his thinking. In 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act was passed, which meant that all runaway slaves had to be returned to their former owners. Sears preached against this law, using the argument that divine law supersedes human legislation, an argument which his opponents may have interpreted as treason. So our comment this morning kind of goes a different direction than some of our previous week's readings have, but reflects on the life of Edmund Sears. So I wonder if anything in the gospel or in these 3 paragraphs from the comment speak to you about, I kind of underlined this idea of the supernatural realm and the realm of nature being intertwined and indivisible. But that's kind of what caught my attention. I wonder what catches y'all's attention this morning.
Kind of, for me, it's just that constant struggle. Jesus even knows what he has to do. He's still struggling with it. He knows that he's going to not have a happy ending in this world, but he has to just do it. He has to push through that. And so the conflict and the struggle that he has, I do think about that a lot. And then, Edmund Sears clearly struggled a lot. For him to have a nervous breakdown and then have to step back partially from his work, the conflicts and the struggles that he has.
Yeah, in my work life, I've been working a lot with this idea of burnout and kind of self-compassion and self-care. So I think it's interesting that the text kind of goes that way and draws attention to the fact that Jesus hid after talking to folks.
Yeah. He had to just step back and just take a breath, whatever that was, I guess.
Yeah, I think that word, hide, but he hid from them. I feel like that's really evocative and just says a lot in just a few words there.
Well, I think that's okay sometimes to just pull back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got the great, over on page 23, that very last paragraph before the response. Our response to conflict or trauma tends towards encouraging the burnt out or lost person to talk. Talking and healing have become indistinguishable. Yet the desire to hide, the need for privacy, the desire for safety, all these remain as responses to conflict, which are reasonable and perhaps sometimes more advisable than talking. Oh, yeah. We may be tempted to be very selective when we ask ourselves, what would Jesus do? But as the text says, after Jesus said this, he departed and hid from them. So in that I hear just more invitation to variety in response, that it may not be a one-size-fits-all in any given situation.
Where does that come from? It says just sit and be still. Where does that, is it from the Bible? Because I can't remember where I've heard it, but it stuck with me, just to sit and be still and whatever. I'll have to think about where I heard that.
There is a psalm, it may be Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. Yeah.
It's on our wall, and yet I still struggle with it. I literally, in 2020, I had a few art projects with my pandemic coping and being home with kids and trying to keep myself busy, and I literally wrote it on the wall.
It is hard.
Despite the constant reminder, and I don't think our culture really, is very accepting of the idea of stepping back or taking breaks. Dusty knows I've been struggling with that a lot, just wanting to take a break.
Yeah.
The kind of culture of busyness, it seems to just be really prominent.
Mm-hmm. Instead of just being quiet and just, and maybe not even thinking, sometimes even just being still and quiet.
Which,
it's hard.
really hard, to turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, the culture of just doing is so ingrained in us from a very early age. And I think just like we spoke about capitalism or economy a few weeks ago, but this idea of production is what gives us value I think is a real strong cultural message we get. And so how to act counterculturally, which I think is part of what Jesus is calling us to. And to move into that space of stillness, still hold our value. My value. I'll use I language.
A lot of times when you're quiet, people go, "What's wrong with you?" Instead of, you having the opportunity to do that, it's perceived as something's bothering you or something's not as it should be.
Yeah, as an introvert, I really resonate with that. Yeah, that there is an expectation that if I'm quiet, something's going on. So let's talk about it. And I may not want to talk at any given moment. But yeah.
I'll probably do that to you, I'm sorry. Sorry.
That's fine. I probably need to talk more than I do.
It's a balance.
Yeah, exactly. That's wrong with me. Why are you so quiet?
Yeah.
That's just a lot there. It's so deep in my brain what you're driving. As I thought about talking and healing being synonymous, I was wondering, and I appreciate the comment about culturally where we are, and I had to go reread it. I did read it last week, but there's a thought about that, about where Sears was culturally, where Jesus was culturally, where are we culturally? I wonder what other juxtapositions there are with talking. I think talking right now is like, if you talk more, you're correct. If you talk more, you're more moral. What's hard for me personally, constantly now, that I've struggled with, I always have, but I was trained to be in the struggle, so I have to own that I'm a lot older than most of y'all. That holding on to that was what the work was. It literally was staying in that. And that's not what's happening now. That makes me feel old, if you want the truth. It makes me feel tired. I've gotten tired of everybody being morally correct constantly because they talk more. I just find such dilemma in the things we face now. They're deep dilemmas. I mean, and it's torturous because then you have to either be right or line up. I don't know. I don't think that's correct. I think you do the best you can. And just these stories, I'm a heretic. I always think the gospel writers are writing in what they're trying to tell the narrative to the people they're talking to, not the story of Jesus. So they're talking to the people finishing, trying to survive. The Romans beating the daylights out of the church, in 90 AD. It's historically correct. Whether Jesus said all that stuff, I don't think he said all that stuff. I think John said that stuff about him, reminding the people who he was. But they're still stuck in the dilemma. They're supposed to fight back, form an army, fight the Romans, live their faith. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And the dilemmas have been true. This is no different than what they're in, our time. But what I don't hear much about is how to do what you just said. How do you hang on to it? What I'm talking about is how do we win our point.
Right.
And I don't know how to do that well for people. Because I kind of want to say, well, what if there's some truth in the other side? Which there always is. Always.
How to hold that
100%.
both and in a culture that the loudest person wins.
Yeah, thank you. You said it better than I did.
Yeah.
And so that's what struck me when I read it before. It just popped me. The society where it tires me. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Because the rapid, incessant talking, which is not about healing at all. And I kind of get in that place too. By the way, extroverts, you know what it is? I'm a super extrovert. So when we're talking, we're just showing you what's inside on the outside. Y'all just hold on to it.
Right.
You got the same dilemmas. I'm just saying them, and if people go like, "You're so stupid," I'm thinking, "You don't have that too." Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
But we should balance it, not say much of it. But it's usually we're talking, we're trying to figure it out. That's what extroverts do. It's a function.
Yeah.
We take it as a moral thing, which I get you again about healing. Talking and healing. Not necessarily progress.
Yeah.
But Jesus' self-awareness, that's what I was getting to. You point to self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, say more about that.
Just that's what I think this passage is about. I don't know exactly what Jesus did say. I've read these texts like y'all so many times. It's confusing to me, and they have so many different ways he says it, and some they contradict. But I know something was going on that pinged for those people, whatever Jesus was saying. And then the thing about sacrificial living lit them up like it lights me up.
Yeah.
Like you want to live it, then you need to walk it.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing to, again, when you're, what's the dilemma? What do I walk?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to choose here?
And I think my personality type, I can really cling on to stuff, and I think letting it go, like the phrase "let it go" came as you were talking, like just what might have been in John's audience to hold on to and to let go. And I hear John give a lot of permission to let go of life in some ways, but of something, yeah.
I think one of the situations we have today is that people are afraid to voice their opinion on things, especially if you want to get into politics or something. Avery and I have friends that it's understood that we never mention politics because they're so different than us. And I'm not sure which one's right, but I think we've come to a point in society now where people, rather than talking, they're hiding because it's very uncomfortable to speak out when you know you might be offending that person next to you.
Yeah, and my experience of that dynamic is that it's exhausting, to use John's word. And so I do look for spaces where I can be authentic, which I hope we're kind of fostering here. But yeah, kind of knowing how to walk lightly and with whom to kind of hold secrets, or whatever language we might want to assign to that, can be pretty exhausting in my experience. What's your experience been of that?
I've learned just to be quiet. I've quit watching the news. I don't read the newspaper. I don't watch TV. I find out all the good, bad, and indifferent without looking at the news. And we had a cardiologist come to one of our VBA chapter, Vietnam Veterans chapter meetings, and he advised all of us to quit watching the news. He said, you're old, and it's not good for you to get under the stress of watching the news.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's a sobering thought.
Cardiologist is terrifying us.
Doctors told me to go.
Now, we'd had a lot of guys who had heart situations occur, and we're all getting old. And this guy just said, quit watching the stuff that stresses you out, meaning the news. So I quit.
Yeah. Yeah, and back to that invitation to kind of find some quiet or stillness or something away from that nonstop stress and anxiety that can come from news and other things.
I'm kind of curious about what Jesus was doing when he was hiding. Like, when I hide, I'm scrolling on Instagram, like screaming something. But I wonder if he was like doing something, or if he was just like sitting quietly and meditating or praying or.
TikTok.
Yeah.
I think you know for sure he wasn't on Instagram. But apart from that, who knows?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. I think that's a great question.
Because it doesn't ever tell us, right?
Yeah.
I guess maybe they say he goes to pray or be with the Father. I feel like they use that, someone uses that terminology somewhere.
But I'm wondering, like, was he hiking? Was he making something?
Yeah.
Who knows? I was curious.
Fishing out on the lake.
Yeah.
Lots of things.
Playing.
Yeah.
We can't imagine that, by the way.
Yeah.
You do that, it starts a riot in Bible classes. Jesus playing, you're like, are you just stupid? I had a great Southernism my buddy Mine taught me. I went to a little church in the South, I was seminary, I'm a Southerner too. He said, John, you just need to learn to lay sorry.
Oh, I'm unfamiliar with that.
Lay sorry.
What's that supposed to mean?
Do nothing. Literally don't do stuff. He said, then you learn that from your ancestors when it's 95 degrees in the afternoon. What did they do? They didn't do anything. They just sat. I don't do that well either. We're so compulsive, we gotta be doing something. I wonder if Jesus was anxious and compulsive. You used a real strong word, and you're not sure a common root of a mentor teaching us about anxiety. We're so anxious, I'm not sure we can wade through that to get to this passage sometimes, which is, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Helen, I appreciate the question. That's a great question.
Yeah.
So we think Jesus is doing what we do. I'm not so sure about that.
Mm.
Then now, some of y'all way younger, but didn't you have great-grandparents or grandparents and watch them just sit? I mean,
Yeah.
Oh,
I wonder
front
how the heck can
porches.
they do that?
Front
They
porch
literally-
sitting, absolutely, yeah. They would just go out
They do
and
stuff.
just sit on the front porch in the evening and just be, and
We can't imagine.
I love front
Now,
porch
y'all,
sitting.
I think we do achieve it, but it gets it back to a real personal level about it.
Yeah.
But hiding's a different question.
Yeah.
That's a strong word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just kind of struck that it feels like we're kind of making space for some stillness this morning. I kind of experienced this silence as kind of contemplative and reflective. It feels inviting in some ways. I don't know what y'all might be experiencing as we kind of maybe have about 10 seconds of silence together. But it does feel like just some stillness more than anything else that might be going on.
I think maybe we're all kind of struggling with what we just read. We're trying to relate our life to Jesus' life. So that makes me kind of think more than I like to think.
That does create questions that may not have emerged for us before. Some new questions. Well, I might move us to kind of the top of page 23. Just thinking about John's words about trying to wade through our stuff to get to what is going on here. But I just appreciate the end of that first paragraph. Do we tend... so this is, again, talking about seers, and that paragraph starts with, where are the issues which demonstrate that modern law and divine law might be in conflict? And then down toward the end of that paragraph, do we tend to follow the call given to Isaiah, comfort, comfort my people, than that proposed by Jesus as he faced his own death? Jesus chose honesty and challenge. He told his followers his soul was troubled. He told them that trouble was to come, yet they could not or would not believe him. The message was not getting through. And just wonder what, as it's framed this way, I experience Jesus as pretty vulnerable to say, my soul is troubled. But wonder what you might hear in those words of this reflection.
Well, sometimes even though he literally bared his soul, sometimes people just either can't or won't listen or process it, and I don't think they could relate to what he was saying, even though he was trying really hard to tell them how he felt. They just didn't get it. For whatever reason, they just didn't get it. That'd be really, really hard for him too.
Yeah.
You know, knowing what was coming and how he tried so hard, and it must be really, really, yeah, to put yourself in his position then and just try to think, oh my gosh, that'd just be really disheartening.
Yeah. What do we do with that depiction of honesty and challenge?
Say again?
That's framed as honesty and challenge by our author here. So I wonder, do we experience Jesus' words as challenging, or how might that present a challenge for us through his honest words?
Well, I guess you still have to speak it, your truth, whatever that is, whether people get it or not, you still have to speak your truth. And I guess he was trying.
Yeah.
It was maybe last week's reflection that talked about kind of being formed through challenge. Maybe that was this week, somewhere I think in here. But talking about it almost feels like Jesus' insistence that his followers kind of speak what they're hearing and understanding. So I appreciate that kind of invitation to continue to work with what I experience as truth and how I might articulate it.
Yeah, I wonder, instead of it's funny, I don't know why my mind's drawn this way, but about the passage, but I appreciate you pushing it because it's coming really, what Frank was saying really think about the passage is that, talking about kind of how it's hard for people to hear him, but it's a great insight. It's like, it's hard when people are urgent about a matter and you're not, but they get pushing it and they have an urgency. The young men and women around surely know what he was talking about was important, or they wouldn't have hung around him. But he pushed it to a level of urgency, making it way more important. Like, need to get out about it now.
Mm.
And maybe that was the point. They couldn't quite get there.
Yeah.
It wasn't that they misunderstood, they weren't so bad. I get that all the time. It's later going like, gosh, how did I miss how important that was and urgent? It needed attention. He's going like, we got to get about this right now.
Yeah.
Be about our Father's business now. They're going like, well, we kind of are. It's kind of, they're not tepid, but obviously they're doing it. They're working their faith. They're working their spirituality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it that way. Rather than he's always so honest and pushing and challenging all the time. And I heard Bill Haslam say something. He spoke at a celebration of life, and I thought what he said is about this person. It's Bob Booker, and what he said was, he said, lots of people get up and tell their truth, and lots of people can talk about love. He says, hard is that ones often talk about truth don't have any love, and the people talk about love don't have any truth. He said, people do both. He said, those listen to. And then he sat down, and I thought, wow, I'd like to die and have somebody say that about me. In other words, there's got to be a combination. Because Jesus also didn't go say, let's go break some heads and get everybody straight.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to do that. He's going to try to win them over in a loving manner. So the way he treated people, you said, does it make sense? That you got me around that funny place again.
Yeah.
Being urgent about these words, but not making enemies with them.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you, hard stuff.
Yeah.
You have really hard stuff in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, how to hold that non-coercive love through the urgency. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard stuff.
Man, we need to be better at this right now.
Yeah.
And I think there are things that are around us all the time that way. People have it, I have it internally about my own life, trying to figure out, I wonder how important that is.
Mm.
Like, turn off the TV because you're going to have a heart attack, get so stressed out.
Yeah.
We have some people, Rick Jenkins did that for me years ago. He told me he did that after 9/11. I always give him credit. I said, Rick changed my life. I quit watching the news. I started feeling better. But I wouldn't have made those connections. How bad all this makes me feel, and then how badly I perform when I feel bad.
Yeah.
which was happening a lot. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So I wonder if they even get, so I'm not trying to wax eloquent, I'm just trying to say, I don't think it's doing it all. We ain't gonna do it all. I just can't do a faith like that. It makes no sense to me. But I wonder if you get a little of it, it can change it.
Mm.
Or even a little bit of his urgency. I don't know what that looks like for each of us, but.
Yeah, back to my personality type. But urgency is hard for me because that feels like more energy than I have to be urgent. So yeah, I appreciate you using that word. That kind of draws me into an uncomfortable space. But I think you're really onto something. And just the incongruence between those who don't think, well, we got time. It's not too urgent. And Jesus saying it's right now.
We were preaching that sermon, Frank could tell that story. That's the story for the sermon, really.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, turn on TV, you're gonna have heart attacks.
Yeah.
What? Like no joke. It's happening all the time. Stress is killing us. It's a great lesson, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, just back to that idea of burnout. Just like, what are we choosing to give our attention to that's drawing us toward burnout and heart attacks, I guess. It's
What was
cardiac, this health.
They freaked out of great intuition. What was Sears burnout? What was that really about?
Yeah, so early in his ministry,
What's going on that he gets burned out? It's a good question for all of us, you know, I don't care what we do, but it burns me out.
But you know, it's almost like a contradiction where Jesus is going, no, you need to do it now. And then in the next breath, well, just sit and be quiet.
Yeah. Mhm.
Do you just take whichever one you feel more comfortable with at that time, or is it always that conflict?
or you quickly sit and be quiet.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
That is, yeah, there's a little bit of a conflict there, isn't it?
The hiding is, I still am, that's where I'm uncomfortable, Jesus hiding, that bothers me. So, I don't know, the hiding, I mean, there's a lot of light and darkness in this and John, but there's something about that, he hid from them. There's something in that to me that's more than just hiding. I mean, is there weakness in hiding? To me, there is. So that bothers me. So that's where I'm working on this.
Did it say why he hid from him?
It doesn't. And that's,
Or is it
Depends
regrouping?
what you're hiding from.
well, that's what I'm asking. I mean, was there weakness in it or is not?
I don't know that regrouping, I mean, you've got 3 boys, you are so busy. Don't you want to just sometimes go hide in your room and shut the door?
Yeah.
I wonder if he felt like that.
Yeah.
Like he had his disciples who were, there was a lot going on and he knew pressure, what was coming. And for me, I think it's almost restorative and it's almost, he's given himself permission to remove himself, to hide himself from them. So however, to your point, like what did he do? I'll be thinking about so many fun things that he could do. Meditating, walking, whatever. But I wonder if that's why he had to do that. I mean, he was so pulled. And I think of you, you've got 3 boys, and they're so busy. Like, don't you love to just go
There's no
hide?
time to hide.
Maybe that's what he's saying, you gotta make it.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew what was coming and he took the time to hide.
Mhm.
Go lock yourself in your room. Or go take a walk.
Never heard a sermon about that topic. You know, something. I appreciate that. Never heard anybody try to tackle. What a quandary. What a way to describe it.
Yeah.
Again, John describes it that way.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a heretic.
Well, I think
It's
that's a
it's
point to make.
perception.
Yeah.
If y'all want to absorb it all as all literally true, y'all go ahead, because I'm not going with you.
Well-
I just don't do it. I keep thinking, but what is it trying to say?
Yeah. So what's important for John with that word?
Yeah, what's he,
For a Jesus who's in total control?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. John's Jesus is not as secretive as Mark's Jesus.
No.
Jesus knows
yeah.
what's going on, John.
Yeah.
And is that his humanness coming out? The hiding, like, is that part of where he just said, I'm tapped out, I have to hide, like Mr. Sears, after 7 years, he tapped out for whatever reason, after 7 years, so maybe that is his humanness. It's coming through where he said, I have to go hide. I'm gonna be thinking about so many different things today, what he would do.
Yeah, there are huge studies about that too. That takes us off a whole other direction. God, thank you for saying that. About,
You've got the
all
ball
about
rolling. It's a
breakthroughs,
great
all kinds
ball.
of stuff. Yeah, that's a
Playing.
great insight about breakthroughs, about, God, there are so many examples where the persons involved were defeated. They just went and did something frivolous, and then boom, the answer was in front of them. There are tons of those stories, by the way. I knew somebody that really studied them and said, we're missing the point. They just keep pounding that rock and doesn't get work. Just keep going at you, not gonna get it. And then interesting, said a step away, but also step away in almost, like you said, what did you say? Like, not put it down, but
Let it go.
let it go. You have to literally take your hands off of it.
Yeah.
Jesus could really do that. I mean, so that he wasn't so urgent all the time. He'd been impenetrable. I mean, be around somebody like that. I think I'm intense. Jesus is way more intense than I've ever been. But there, you have that personality. I have an intense personality. When I get on something, I'm after going to get it fixed. And it stays with me. I mean, I keep going and going. But I'm real familiar in this society. I learned the lesson well. I'm not proud of that, but I have. And I kind of wonder about that a little bit. I wonder if John's making another comment. That's a great insight. It's fun, thanks. That's good stuff.
It is good that next time somebody says, what would Jesus do? Just say, like, go high. Just let them play with that.
There was back in my Nashville days, there was a guy who would do a skit. He was called Brother Preacher, but he was just like this over-the-top sort of preacher guy. And he would always talk about confounding people, and I thought that would just confound someone.
That last paragraph on page 23, did you read that? Is it tied in? There you go. Yeah, that's a very thought-provoking paragraph. I'll have to read that again.
Well, I'm aware of time. We don't have Jerry here to give us the final thought for the day.
We could call him. He probably has one.
So why don't, it's always a little risky to read a prayer together, but why don't we try just aloud to read the prayer on page 24 together. So once we're all there, let us pray. O God of love and peace, we call to you in a time of war. We seek assurance that you hear our cries, yet we know that even now the warring people hear not the songs of peace the angels sing. Enable us in our time to find and seek peace, even in the sounding of the war trumpets. Amen. Thank you all. We'll gather for our final meeting next week on Palm Sunday.
Good, that's good stuff.
Thank you all.
What a fast.
Yeah.